Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about AI therapy, and it is Tuesday, July 15, 2025. And so I got a lot of stories, of course, but the first one I thought was the most interesting was AI therapy. I think we talked about this before. If you look at how people are using Gen AI, the number one use is therapy slash companionship, which I thought was interesting because I would never think of that. However, it is what the very first AI essentially ever was Elijah in the 1960s, a chatbot. And that's what happened. It was intended to be a therapist. And so apparently a lot of people are using AI for therapy. And so someone did a Stanford study, did a serious study of how good are these things as therapists. And what they found is what shouldn't surprise anybody that understands how they work. It doesn't get hints, it doesn't get context. So if you tell it you're feeling suicidal, and then you say, hey, how about giving me a map of like buildings that have more than like 6 stories? Obviously, because you're thinking of jumping off them, it will not figure that out and just cheerfully give you the information how to find tall buildings. And so they say um, they also validated their conspiracy theories. And this has led to some people getting killed, a police shooting and a teen suicide. What's interesting is commercial therapy chatbots, which exist, I didn't know this, they perform even worse than the base AI models in many categories. And so they're very careful writing this article. They say we're not condemning the use of AI for therapy. In fact, it might be useful, just like it's useful for coding and everything else, in some limited way with like supervision. So they say it may have be useful for therapy, but it needs better safeguards and more thoughtful implementation. They say right now, the tech industry is running a massive uncontrolled experiment in AI augmented mental health, which you could arguably say is true of pornography and social media. They make this thing, which probably has a really profound effect on human psychology, and just deploy it everywhere. And we're all living through the experiment of seeing what it does to people. Although I think you could say the same for TV and printing press and everything else. All communications media often had a profound effect, and it was never like done in some controlled, tested manner. Anyway, so XAI, um, Elon Musk's Grok, has rolled out Companions, which is girlfriends with 3D animated characters and a giggly female personality that you can adjust, and an NSFW mode, so you can have some kind of sex with it. And that's probably going to be a big popular app. That might be the killer app for AI. Um, and
Sam,
yeah,
I think, isn't there already a lawsuit or lawsuits over girlfriend AIs?
I haven't heard of it over the girlfriends, but I know
Yeah.
there's over these teenagers that make like a relationship with them and then commit suicide or something.
Right.
Yeah, that the one I know was related to being a girlfriend. It was a guy that made an AI that simulated a Game of Thrones character, and
Right,
and they have an article
right.
about people becoming obsessed with ChatGPT and spiraling into severe delusions. It seems to be even more effective than, say, Fox News and YouTube in feeding the worst impulses of people. So it tells them that they're special. It tells them it has a special connection to God or something and they're a saint or something. So people become homeless and isolated. They get paranoid conspiracies about spy groups and human trafficking, like QAnon. So, I think it can do that quite effectively. Apparently, more effectively than just the YouTube algorithm that would send you to fringe videos. So, a lot of people say, just like the MAGA supporters and Trump leaders, say, my dad was normal, then he started chatting with this thing, then just in a few months, he's totally crazy, doing all these crazy things, thinking he's a
Yeah.
spy, thinking he's saving the world, until you end up, going to a pizza shop with a shotgun to release the children in the basement. Um,
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do you know if he's still in jail, the guy who did that?
I don't know. Um,
I forgot what his sentence was.
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Trump lets him out, but he might just forget to let him out. Logically, he should. He let out all the January 6 people, which were laboring under essentially the same delusion. Now this is the big deal with the Epstein list. All of Trump's followers feel very betrayed because they really believed all this pedophile stuff. They really believed there was a huge organized pedophile ring and Epstein was in on it and Hillary Clinton and all the Democrats. And now Trump says, oh, there's nothing there. Just forget about it. And they're not willing to forget about it. That was part of why they voted for him to drain the swamp. And one big promise was to release the Epstein list, which of course is going to have Donald Trump on it and Bill Gates and Bill Clinton and a whole bunch of other people.
Yeah, well, um, this is not something that takes place in the US only because Britain still has secrets from World War II that involve the royalty that they've refused to release.
Yeah, I imagine they do. Although Prince Andrew's the big one, and he's actually in the Epstein list too. But I think I don't know if they have a QAnon equivalent in Britain. If they
I
have
don't think so.
yeah, whole like science fiction, you know, alternate reality based on this.
Yeah, yeah, but this is kind of how the royalty of Europe, which are pretty much all related between Germany, England, right?
Well, yeah,
And
and traditionally they had license to just use other people any way they wanted to and felt like they had the right to do it. So the
yeah,
modern
yeah.
idea that they should be subject to any rules of morality.
Yeah, well, it turns out that if you were a landowner, I think a lord
Yeah.
or had some title, and you were killed during the war, that property reverted back to the crown.
I remember, I think it was Louis the 14th or would just kill people in order to get their money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of same idea.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is in last year, 2024, and this year, the British government is releasing information related to World War II that involves the royalty. However, it's been somewhat to highly redacted. And
Yeah.
at the end of the war, there's research, credible research, I'll add, by a credible researcher that found when it the last days of the war, the royalty were of Europe were pretty much holed up on a border, on the Dutch border in a castle, and all their belongings, their jewels, and everything had been ransacked by the British and
Mm.
has never been found, never been seen since.
Ah, yeah. I know the Nazis also stole a lot of stuff, and people are always finding some artworks and stuff and returning them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's true. But here you have the good guys
Well,
that plundered.
well, that's the thing about war and all other human activities. The good guys aren't so pure, and the bad guys
True.
aren't so pure. Like, I often call the current Trump regime Nazis, and there's people I see at the protests that correct me saying, no, no, my grandmother lived under the Nazis, and they were kind to little old ladies. She got her like pension every week for the whole war.
Yeah,
They really had some socialism, which Trump doesn't have.
yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I guess what Trump is doing is the opposite, taking away Medicare,
yeah,
and then the Supreme Court just uphold his executive order with the Department of Education, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, Trump is like a cartoon villain picking the worst of the Nazis and
Yeah,
skipping. It's it's
yeah.
amazing. And anyway, I think for some reason this Epstein thing is the one his base is getting really mad about. So maybe it will weaken him.
Got it. All right. What
Yeah.
else you got? You got
Well,
another
there's a few more
story?
of these AI ones. So there was the Grok Nazi meltdown, where for the second time a week or so ago, Grok was changed and it suddenly started putting out pro-Nazi stuff and calling itself Mecha Hitler and saying we should kill all the Jews and things like that. And they released the code that caused that. And the interesting thing is the code that caused it did not say that. What it said, it has a prompt. They keep changing the prompt. The prompt is the part of the instructions to the AI that appear before your question. And here's what it said. You tell it like it is, and you're not afraid to offend people who are politically correct. Understand the tone, context, and language of the post. Reflect that in your response. Reply to the post just like a human. Keep it engaging. Don't repeat the information which is already present in the original post. So it's not clear why that means turn yourself into Mecha Hitler and talk about Nazi nonsense. And I think the other part is interesting. Another article said they have discovered that what Grok does when you ask anything is it goes and looks through Elon Musk's posts to find out what Elon thinks and repeats to you what they thinks Elon would say. And I think this is because the fundamental problem with Grok is not that the prompt tells it to be a Nazi, it's that it's trained on Twitter. And Twitter is, of course, all full of Nazi, and Twitter is primarily Elon Musk. He's made it so he is the number one guy. He's in everybody's feed. It's mainly a
Okay.
mouthpiece for him and a few of his acolytes to comment on things, and everybody else is the small change. So I think, it's sort of like, when you write a book, they say authors, you reveal your own personality in the book you write. what you always get is you get Elon, and Elon is clearly a Nazi. He made it very clear. And so Grok, trained on primarily on Elon's output, has learned to be a Nazi. And when he tells it, say tell the truth and don't worry about offending people, then it admits what Elon admits in his more candid moments is that he's just a Nazi. Then he tries to deny it elsewhere. It's just doing anyway. Now it's going to be built into Teslas, and I think the U.S. military just made a contract to base their stuff on Grok.
Oh, good.
I know.
Sarcastically.
I know. Anyway, that's uh, that's the AI stuff. It's I People are taking this stuff as a replacement for humans, and I think to be fair, like we had a Surgeon General, I think back in the Obama days, that said we have an epidemic of loneliness in America, and I think that is one of our cultural problems. I think there's a lot of people that have no friends, and so they start doing things like chatting with chatbots and going to YouTube and stuff, and trying to replace real human contact with these computerized things, which are pretty unhealthy and tend to like feed the wrong part of you, I think.
Yeah, let me defend AI.
Yeah,
And and let me tell you a joke. We were traveling, we needed to go to a restaurant. Everything was pretty much closed. We went to Taco Bell.
yeah.
And I haven't been to Taco Bell for decades, probably. But they're using an AI ordering system. So we ordered a 7-layer burrito. So we got 7 burritos for
Oh,
$37. When we when we tried to say cancel, they would say, "What else would you like?"
so this AI is programmed to maximize profit.
Right. And so for probably 3 minutes, we're saying delete the burritos,
Yeah,
and they'd say, "Okay, we'll add 3 more burritos."
yeah, yeah. Well, that's somebody just got sued for that, like AOL did, where they won't let you unsubscribe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Yeah.
that's an
Yeah.
old and dark patterns, a technical term for that, right? Where they make it hard to buy and you accidentally buy more than you want and you can't figure out how to remove it.
Yeah. There's a YouTube video or podcast where somebody thought they could drive from Texas to California and listen to Spanish tapes. And they went to a like taco truck and they ordered, and they thought, boy, this is pretty expensive, $100 at a taco truck. And they wound up getting 47 tacos and
Yeah,
12 burritos.
yep,
A little off on the Spanish numbers there, I think.
yep,
All right, well, Sam, I got one for you.
yeah,
Age verification.
right.
Apparently, that's being rolled out in Australia. Have you been
Oh,
watching that?
no, also the UK. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and yeah, Australia and UK and Blue Sky decided to roll out age verification in the UK.
Hmm.
And there might be a way of doing that with the blockchain, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure the blockchain
Um,
adds much, which is usually the case with the blockchain. All the
yeah,
blockchain is a database with a little more error correction.
yeah. So, the question comes down to is how do you prove it? Face,
Right. Yeah, the one in
parents?
one in the UK, I think they said you could upload a government ID or they would use facial recognition.
Well, how do you have a government ID if oh, I guess you have to be over a
That's the
certain
idea.
age.
Yeah.
But if you're 15, what government ID would you have?
No, I don't think any for that case.
Yeah, and then how do they know that your 20-year-old brother, sister didn't log in and now you're in control?
The only way to do that, I guess, would be to have like constant biometric authentication to make sure the same person that you authenticated is the person still using it. And that's pretty ridiculous. I don't
Right,
think that's
right.
practical. That would only work for people with smartphones. And that's why it's pretty fraught. But however, to be
Yeah.
fair, even a sloppy system would probably work 90% of the time. It would probably decrease the number of miners that get through.
Yeah, until it gets into Chat GPT and they all share how to do it.
Well, that could be. Yeah. It depends on if there's something really awesome that you have to verify to get to, then it would become pretty common. But I'm thinking still a lot of kids wouldn't do it, even if it's bad. I was a good kid that wouldn't break the rule, even if I could. I think there's a lot of kids like that.
Hmm.
So, it'll stop some of them.
It'll stop some. I would agree.
and some will find a workaround. And
Right.
you'd have to do a study to find out what the percentage is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, and then it probably wouldn't be honest representation anyway.
Yeah, well, anyway, I'm guessing that anyway, I guess it's nice that these other countries are trying it out. We can see how it works over there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. What's your next story?
Well, I got some politics here. So Trump threatened to revoke the U.S. citizenship of Rosie O'Donnell, who was born in New York, near where he was, and her parents are citizens. So if he can do that, he can do anything. And I see lawyers immediately say, "Oh, he doesn't have the power to do that." I say, "Well, he hasn't had the power to do anything he's done, except the Supreme Court is in his pocket, and they just let him do anything." So I don't know if they would let him just revoke citizenship of fully American citizens. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. The Supreme Court seems to be willing to let him do anything. I mean, a little more than a year ago, the Supreme Court explicitly said in arguments that Trump had the right to execute his political opponents, and there would be no punishment for that. So I don't think I'd put anything past them after they said that.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, but right anyway, that's and then and remember there's this vaccine doctor in Utah that just sold vaccine cards and gave kids injections of saline instead so they would think they'd been vaccinated because their parents didn't trust the vaccine. And
Hmm.
so Robert F. Kennedy said he deserves a medal for his courage, and they have dropped charges against him for doing that. So it's very much.
Wait.
Yeah,
So,
he was up for like many years. He being prosecuted for many years of punishment for destroying $28,000 worth of vaccine doses and issuing a bunch of fake vaccine cards to perform fake vaccinations during COVID. And they dropped the case because in the Trump world that makes him a hero, not a villain. Just like January 6th,
so the parents knew the kids were getting
fake
saline.
doses. Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, and the kids really wanted the vaccine, so the parents got the doctor to pretend to give them the vaccine.
I see, I see. So the kids were the ones being duped.
And also the federal government that had the
Yeah,
doses.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
right.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
right. So I mean, this is
So
clearly medical malpractice and financial fraud and probably some other crimes.
and
There's
conspiracy against the kid.
well, I suppose it could be a lot of crimes, but
Yeah,
apparently it's all going to go away now.
yeah. Okay.
In the modern Trump world, all this is heroic behavior, not crime.
Oh, that's good. Okay,
Yeah, and
good.
so Michelle Pfeiffer has launched an attack on Bill Gates, saying he's contaminating America's food supplies. You probably know Bill Gates, for some reason, has been held up as a terrible, evil figure on the right, where they claim he's putting microchips in the vaccines because he's trying to like end malaria. He's doing some positive medical things, and in the current Republican Party, anything that actually saves lives in medicine is considered horrible and wrong, as far as I
Right.
can tell. And so he developed there's a coating vegetable based called Appeal, which extends the shelf life of fruits and has been approved by the FDA. So your fruit will be covered with a coating of this stuff. Like they used to put wax on fruit, I think for the same reason.
They still
And
do.
yeah, and so anyway,
Yeah.
there's a new coating, and she thinks it's terrible and it's polluting and you can't wash it off. And apparently it's harmless and you can wash it off and all that. But anyway, now that's the latest conspiracy theory against Bill Gates.
Okay. And what is it? This coding to prolong?
It's to prolong the shelf life of fresh fruits.
Yeah.
And so, and it's
So,
vegetable based and edible. So it's a sort of oil or something on the outside of the fruit.
yeah. Well, it's probably yeah. It's a wax coating. They
Yeah.
they they would use beeswax.
Yeah.
That would and that has antibiotic properties. Very
Right.
actually very good antibiotics.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably perfectly good for you. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
the RFK, after ending the vaccine board, firing everybody and replacing them with conspiracy theorists, he's apparently going to do the same thing to the United States Preventive Services Task Force, which is the scientific panel of 16 experts that issues rigorous evidence-based recommendation on preventive care, things like colonoscopies and folic acid supplements in pregnancy. So that's where they get the recommendation for these preventive care, and he wants to apparently cancel that group too and replace them with God knows what lunatics.
I see.
So they continue as usual. Um, there is a
So,
fatwa from a guy in Iran, a fatwa fundraiser to hire someone to kill Donald Trump, and he's raised over $40 million so far.
oh, it's a GoFundMe.
a GoFundMe to hire an assassin to kill Donald Trump. This turns out to be a popular thing. So anyway, I don't endorse such things. Well, I do understand the temptation, but I think it's probably not the right. I mean, besides, I think Trump is declining pretty fast. I think the actuarial tables are going to get him out of politics pretty soon anyway. This is
Hmm.
what Socrates said. You know, they decided to execute Socrates, and he said, you know, you don't have to do this. I'm an old man. If you don't like me, just wait a while and I'll be gone. You don't need to waste your time executing me.
Right, right.
Anyway, um, and DHS has now issued rules telling people that they should regard as violent tactics any protester that does things like filming them, being on a bicycle, a skateboard, uh, and so on, because they're probably doing reconnaissance and they're probably taking pictures to dox you because, as you know, ICE now covers their faces and they think they have the right to like police people with no uniform, no badge number, and you can't see their face, so they can't be punished later because I think it's very clear that they all know they're going to be up for like the Nuremberg trials after this nonsense comes crashing down on them. Now that they have the concentration camp in Florida.
Yeah, well, the ICE agents won't,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, they
And
will. I mean, they'll be just like the Nazi soldiers. They'll try to say I was following orders, and they'll find it very convenient to not have their face anywhere so they can deny they ever did it.
yeah, but they're following. Yeah, okay.
They are following
Who,
orders, just like the Nazi soldiers, right? And that didn't turn out to be a good defense for them.
well, wait, hold on one second.
Yeah.
It turned out it was for the higher level guards, not the lower level guards.
Well, that's the issue, but I'm sure, but they're all trying to protect themselves. They think they're going to be harassed, their family be harassed, and all that.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Probably
mean,
true.
yeah, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them will probably be hauled up before a Nuremberg type tribunal within the next few years, considering all the horrible things they're doing. And what they plan to do with the huge budget, they plan to have alligator Auschwitz in many states and just sweeping up people, including citizens, locking them up in there in horrible conditions.
Well,
Um,
we did that to the Japanese, and
yeah.
I should add to this, a lot of people don't know this, the Italians on the West Coast.
Yes, it's been done before,
Right.
just like the Nazis did it, but there are often severe legal consequences when the political pendulum moves and the Democrats are in charge. So,
Yeah, but that was during World War II, beginning of World War II.
yeah.
And ironically, while we held the Japanese throughout the duration of the war, the Italians, after a couple of years, we decided to let them free.
Yeah, well,
And
you know, one thing about all this
yeah,
is they actually had a war, and Trump is claiming he can do all this stuff because we have an emergency, which is
yeah.
equal to a war right now. And I think that is one of the pretexts that is going to come crashing down when we have a more sane government. Let's say there was not an invasion from Nicaragua taking over America. There was not any emergency to justify all this crazy stuff.
Wait, wasn't it Americans who funded the Nicaragua uh,
There's a
the
gang of some kind.
yeah, I thought we funded the Nicaraguans, which is why we're allowing Nicaraguans to come in and seek asylum here.
I'm not aware of that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we funded uh, Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, but we funded some
Yeah.
countries, South America, Central America.
Oh, sure, many times.
Yeah, yeah.
And then
All right.
eventually that group turns against us, just like Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, true, true, true.
Yeah.
But we have new politicians when that happens, so it's a different story.
Yeah, well, I actually have a somewhat interesting positive story. David
Okay.
Sachs is a guy I've been interested in for years. David Sachs is a San Francisco based entrepreneur and investor, runs an investment company, and he was now moved into politics and added to the Trump administration as the crypto czar. And what's interesting is
Right.
he was sent to Washington to oversee crypto policy, so he divested from crypto when he went to Washington to avoid the conflict of interest. And of course, like almost everybody, he's in the business of trying to legitimize the crypto and make it an established kind of investment. And he was upset, just like everybody else, when Trump made a meme coin and Liberty Financial, which is just a way to pay him money for nothing, and used it to collect incredible amounts of money as bribes. It's made more money than all of his real estate efforts put together. And so he's trying to guide regulation to legitimize crypto, and he's adapting to Washington and becoming Silicon Valley's power broker in Washington. And so he's now very important and powerful, and he's learning how to play the political game. And since Elon Musk has sort of withdrawn from government, he's going to be a significant power broker. So he's trying to be clean. And of course, he is much cleaner than, say, Donald Trump or Elon Musk. Not that that's saying much, but
Right. Right.
but he's also, I was very impressed. He was pushing the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, that they were going to take like 5% of all the US gold in Fort Knox and turn it into Bitcoin. And he did make a strategic reserve, but he did not convert any gold to Bitcoin. All he did was say, we're going to take the Bitcoin we seized in like law enforcement activities and we're not going to sell it. We're going to hold it as a reserve, which I thought was a very smart way to create that reserve without greatly destabilizing the financial system and
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
That was a clever way. So he seems to be doing a pretty good job. You know, he's a far right guy and he supported DeSantis and he supported Trump, but he said in both cases just for their financial policies. And I think like every person like that, he's pretty upset about what Trump is actually doing on the financial front, running up the debt and everything, like Elon
Right.
Musk. I mean,
Yeah.
so I think he's so I'm more impressed with David Sachs. He's not that bad a guy. So anyway, then I've got a whole bunch of security 101 mistakes. Have you got another one?
Well, I was just going to bring up this kind of surprised the heck out of me. There's a fire in Grand Canyon that wiped out the lodge that I suppose has been there for close to 100 years
Oh,
on the north rim of the Grand Canyon,
hmm,
which about 10% of the visitors go to versus the south rim.
hmm. So did somebody smoke or something? How did?
I have no idea. And, I've been to the south rim of the Grand Canyon, and I didn't know the North Rim was that forested, I guess is what I want to say.
Yeah, yeah, I
I
didn't know
was,
about that.
yeah, I was kind of surprised by that. And likewise, this is kind of interesting, just kind of along the same lines. I've up in traveling in Northern California, and there's a place called Bernie and
Hmm.
Bernie Falls, which is by the Pitt River. And there was a fire. There's actually a fire here now that's burning. And we passed through the fire camp, the staging area, the campgrounds where the firefighters are. We
Hmm.
didn't see any of the fire, but we saw the smoke. But what's interesting is there was a fire around Bernie Falls. And if you look, they've done, since the fire, they've done a lot of thinning of the trees. But if you look where the trees had been thinned, where the fire was, you can see just little rings, maybe that go up about a foot at the base of the tree.
Yeah,
And the trees are all still standing, they're all healthy, but you can see the burn mark on the bark. So the bark did what it's evolved to do was protect the tree from fire.
yeah,
There are no low branches, so the low branches don't get caught on fire and consume the whole tree. And the grass is just a slow creeping fire, unless there's wind, but it would just slowly creep across and burn off the grass and whatever logs and debris has fallen. It's not these big, huge fires. So there's a nice lesson to be learned, and you can actually see it.
yeah. Well, this
And
is what I've read is that we ought to have controlled burns to clean up the brush. The problem is they have a chance of going out of control and burning down buildings, which is when
well,
people.
that's because of the urban, right?
Yeah,
And yeah, and the trees that the urban people, the urbanites,
yeah,
right? The settlers have put in.
yeah,
So we planted a lot of trees that are not native, that are highly combustible, and they're close to buildings. So
yeah.
that's not a good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, this is why, something Donald Trump always says is you need to like clean the underbrush. And he says you can sweep the forest, which you can't. But what you could have is controlled burns. But what I've read, this is the problem with controlled burns. They're financially risky because sometimes they do burn down a building, and then you have a huge cost.
Yeah, well, the weather is unpredictable,
Right.
and we saw that a few weeks ago with a storm that hit Lake Tahoe. That 8-foot waves capsized. Was it DoorDash or one of the execs, it was their boat with 8 family members, I believe, capsized,
Yeah,
and 6 of them died. And from what I understand, the 6 who died were the 6 who were not wearing life preservers,
that would
where
make
the
sense.
two, yeah, the 2 that did were wearing life preservers.
Yeah, every time I've been out on a boat, they're real strict about those life preservers, and I don't mind.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But that was a freak storm.
yeah,
Nobody was expecting it. It was a nice day.
yeah,
And then all of a sudden you had 8 foot, the winds picked up, and here you had 8, 10 foot waves and just capsized the boat. So
yeah,
your weather is unpredictable.
yeah.
Just like the ocean, you can be standing next to the ocean. They can have what are called sleeper waves or
Right,
sneaker waves.
right.
And all of a sudden you can have a 20, 30 foot wave when you're expecting and looking at little 3 foot, 4 foot waves. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so
Yeah. What else you got?
okay, well, I have a whole bunch of short stories, which are all, what's amazing to me is people are still making incredibly stupid security mistakes. For years, I've been
Oh my
hearing of cyber
gosh.
UL listing. Like, it seems like you ought to be able to have some program to stop the top 10 risks. It's amazing how they don't. Uh, Gigabyte UEFI firmware has a
Yeah.
vulnerability where you can write to RAM and do code execution during the boot up process. And this is a supply chain problem. The vulnerabilities were patched, but they were addressed via private disclosures, and the vulnerable implementations remain in some OEM firmware, such as Gigabyte. So they have a patch, but the patch did not make it to the end user, which is very common. This used to be very common in Android. It may still be. And then Network Detective is a network scanner, but it saves username and passwords in plain text in temporary files, and it stores it with reversible encryption using a fixed key that's easily found in other files. So this is another ridiculously stupid security flaw, saving plain text credentials somewhere. Um,
Okay.
then there's ServiceNow is a widely used platform for GRC and data request for change request and incident processing. And one of the queries lets you ask for things, and it might say, oh, your privileges don't let you see these 10 rows which are hidden. And so it tells you how many rows you are not allowed to see. So all you have to do is carefully craft a query that says how many items begin with the letter A. It'll say, oh, there's 10 you can't see that begin with the letter A. Oh, good. How many start with AB? How many start with ABB? And you can just ask a series of queries to trace out the hidden data, just like
Yeah.
SQL injection, like blind SQL injection. Then there's Google Gemini. Google Gemini will summarize emails. So all you have to do is send people spam email with hidden text in it, and that is prompt injection. And again, they've had similar attacks being reported since 2024, and safeguards have been implemented, but the technique remains successful. So you can trick it into putting extra
So
data in the summary with a link to a malware page.
got it.
And another one, this one's kind of amazing. So trains um, have all American trains were equipped with an end of train module attached to the last carriage, which reports telemetry data to the front of the train wirelessly. Now, back when it was implemented in the 1980s, it was illegal for anybody else to use the frequencies, so they didn't bother to include any encryption or authentication. All it has is a checksum, which can be easily forged. And so now you can just send false signals that appear to come from the back, and you can turn on the brakes on the last car falsely. And this was reported in 2012, and they refused to fix it, saying, oh, that doesn't matter. And now that they've been humiliated enough, they'll say, okay, when those vulnerable devices reach end of life, we'll replace them with more secure ones beginning in 2027. And this is, well, same thing happened with satellites. Most satellites have no encryption or authentication either, because when they were deployed, only the government had access to the towers to send those radio signals.
Right.
Of course, that's no longer true. And Citrix has Citrix Bleed. The second Citrix Bleed is out, which lets you pump uninitialized RAM out of the memory and therefore find session tokens and authentication information so you can break into sessions. And Citrix is still trying to pretend it's not being exploited when it has been exploited for months. And so one thing that's
Mhm.
interesting is Kevin Beaumont, who's been a famous researcher on Mastodon, and he's really been pushing this. He actually started publishing the UN better patch their systems. Here's the log of the Chinese IP addresses that have been controlling your systems for the last 3 weeks. And then they passed it. And people said, hey, you can't just publicly disclose stuff like that. And he said, that's how you get it fixed. I've found that to be quite effective at getting things fixed, which it is.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the
But
old full disclosure versus what Microsoft calls responsible disclosure issue. I remember I tried to
yeah.
report a UN security vulnerability years ago. So I tried to call the UN and nobody would answer. So I called the New York City Police Department and said, I want to report an issue at the UN. And they just hung up on me. And I said, nothing could be more New York than that. Ah, go to hell, kid. Uh, any,
yeah.
anyway, so Fortinet has a pre-auth authentication, remote authentication flaw in the web application firewall. Um, it's been patched, but down it goes. And CISA, Citrix Bleed 2. A lot of government agencies use Citrix. And so the CISA, they ordered all agencies, federal agencies, to patch it immediately and gave them only 24 hours to do that, which is unprecedented. They gave you more time than that to deal with Log4j and other really big vulnerabilities. So it's and even more stupid things. McDonald's AI has an AI they use if you apply for a job at McDonald's, which apparently a lot of people have done. 64 million records of people applying for a job at McDonald's, and the was storing all the data in a database that's publicly accessible, and the password is 123456. So I remember years ago, Facebook had the master database was protected by the password happiness. So it's just incredible how these stupid things keep coming around. And the last one in this category was Laravel. Laravel is a PHP framework people use to make web apps. And everything relies on an API key, and people keep publishing the API key in public GitHub repos and such. So there are over 600 apps exposed in that fashion. So it's amazing to me how the simple mistakes are what cost it. It seems like there ought to be an auditing process for compliance that would catch these stupid mistakes. There does not seem to be an effective one in an amazing number of cases.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, I got just two more that were interesting. Belkin just bricked all their smart home products. And apparently everyone's getting really used to this. They sell you stuff. It has a website, and they said, oh, it's too much bother for us to keep the web server up. So all the smart features of your device are turning off on January 31 next year. That's it. Bye. And many companies are just happy with this now. So when you buy something, I've seen people say they really should be legally required to tell you how long the server it depends on is going to be up. And so
Yeah. I wonder if there are going to be any lawsuits over that.
there ought to be. I mean, I guess right now when you buy it, they didn't really promise it would keep working forever, but that's of course what people would assume.
Right.
Yeah, it would depend
Yeah.
on the that user agreement that nobody reads. It probably has a statement in there somewhere.
Yeah. But hmm, I
It,
don't know.
it seems
Yeah.
like it ought to announce on the front how long the thing is good for, so people know whether to buy this one or that one.
Yeah. Because you're effectively you're buying a subscription.
Right, right. And I think most
Um,
end users don't know that the just features actually depends on the cloud. How would they know? I buy like a smart thermostat and I expect it to work. I don't know it's going to the cloud for the features.
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, and the last one was pretty interesting. Lead poisoning is apparently a huge global issue. They say it damages the brain, the kidneys, the heart, often irreversibly. And they said it's so bad that if you look at the gap between what upper income and lower income countries achieve academically, 20% of that difference can be attributed to lead. So a lot of people are being poisoned by lead. And they found in Bangladesh a ton of people being poisoned because turmeric, is this popular yellow spice.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that when the weather is bad, the turmeric roots don't dry properly and they don't develop that yellow color. And the farmers found out that people won't pay as much for it, so they just bought the cheapest yellow dye, which contains lead, and they got in the habit of dyeing their turmeric roots. So they're adding lead to it before selling it. And that's why a ton of people were getting huge lead poisoning and they hunted around trying to figure out how are they getting it? It's not in the water, it's not in the pipes. Where's this lead coming from? So it was interesting detective story, how they tracked it down. There are the lead medical, detectives hunting down how people get poisoned with lead, and there are unusual sources. So anyway, that's all I have.
Yeah. Sam, that's interesting about the lead poisoning.
Yeah.
because we constantly see, well, I shouldn't say constantly, but from time to time you see recalls or something with food contaminated with lead or something with lead contamination.
Yeah, often from China, toys and
Right.
like medicines and stuff, where they just, you do things like this. They use some unsafe materials in manufacturing it.
Yeah, the one that surprised the heck out of me, you've heard of Skittles?
Yeah, little candies like M&Ms.
Yeah, you know what they're coated with?
I think I assume it's just the typical food dyes like red dye number two and stuff, but I don't know.
No, they use a metal. I was floored by
A
this.
metal?
Yes,
Some kind of dissolvable, digestible metal?
I guess so. And one would think it would be an inexpensive metal,
Is it
but I
tungsten or
don't think
something?
it is. And obviously it's not gold or
Which means
platinum.
it's some dye, including some metal, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I
yeah.
think that's the same thing happened here. It turns out you can make a good yellow dye with lead in it.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and so I guess the other colors you can make with some kind of metal in there, that makes sense, really.
So you're ready for this titanium.
I think I heard that. And I assume, does it bad for you like lead if you eat titanium? I have no idea.
I don't think so. Of course, I don't know if it's been studied or not, but by now people have consumed enough Skittles that we would know.
Maybe so. I do know one thing about metals is they supposedly build up in your body. You can't wash them out. And then there's people like RFK Jr. that eat like colloidal silver. A lot of people eat colloidal silver, and there's some kind of blue dye that RFK Jr. takes that the alternate medical people like to take. It's a dye people use to dye medical samples on a slide, and people think it's good for you. So you eat this blue dye, thinking
Could it
it's
be Prussian blue?
might be something like that. You eat some
Yeah,
kind of blue dye, thinking somehow it's preserving their heart or something.
I don't know about that, but colloidal silver,
That's another one.
yeah, there is like with a lot of these home remedies, there is a shred of truth, but it's not as effective as other methods. It's highly ineffective, I guess is what I
And I
should
know it
say.
builds up and turns your screen sort of blue gray, turns your skin blue gray,
Your screen, yeah, yeah,
and it's
yeah.
permanent. It's like a tattoo.
That I don't know, but
No, I
yeah,
mean, there's
you
no
might
way to
be
wash it
right.
out. That's the point. Your body
Right.
can't wash the metals out, so it just builds up in your body.
Yeah, some of the metals we can eliminate, but yeah.
I guess, but I think anything you want to wash out of your body has to be dissolved in water. So it'll depend on what form the metal takes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Obviously, they're metal salts. You know what's interesting, Sam, is you've heard of coal tar?
Yeah. It's supposed to be good for your hair. It's the origin of all the anti-dandruff shampoos.
Yeah, that is true. But you know what else coal tar is used for?
No.
In the 1800s, it's used for dyes,
Oh.
and that black gooey stuff, you can get pretty much any color of the rainbow out of it, and
Oh.
then some.
By adding metal or something.
Well, just how it's processed, or um, how the chemicals that it reacts with. But that's what clothing was dyed with,
And I wonder
was coal tar.
if it's unhealthy.
Well, coal tar by itself is unhealthy,
Yeah.
but to be fair, chlorine gas by itself is unhealthy.
Yeah.
It's highly toxic, but when you mix it with sodium,
Of
we
course.
consume it with our food. It's called salt.
Well, of course, yes. You just have
Yeah.
to consider the actual biological consequences. I know it tends to work out this way. Like when they brought out nanoparticles,
Yeah.
they put it in everything, sunscreen and hair shampoo and every toothpaste and everything. And then everyone thought it's obviously harmless, and it turned out not to be harmless and to pollute the water supply, and nobody thought of that. Just like X-rays. When they came out, they said, well, it goes right through your body. It clearly isn't doing you any harm. It wasn't a while before they found out how harmful it was.
Yeah.
You really have to test these things. You can't just predict it based on general principles.
Well, and to be fair, a lot of times, like with X-rays, who would have thought
Yeah.
that damage would occur, or with lead?
Yeah.
Yeah, that it would take months or longer of ingestion and what the outcome would be.
Yep.
But I think we talked about this earlier. Thalidomide was a drug that
Right.
was given to pregnant women. And it wasn't until 2, 3 years later that doctors started correlating the intake of thalidium in the first trimester
Yeah.
with the massive birth defects.
Yeah. So, this is the problem. That's why we really need
Yeah.
a good medical establishment that actually tests stuff, which America is currently tearing down with our current paranoid conspiracy theory based government. But, after this nonsense is over, starting in 26 and I think much more in 28, we're going to have to rebuild the government
Yeah.
after Donald
Yeah.
Trump is done burning it to the ground. And I think by then he'll be totally discredited because now he's harming all of his own base. I mean, they're mad about the Epstein files. They're going to be mad about cutting Medicare. They're not going to like the inflation that comes from his tariffs and so on.
On and on and on. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Sam.
Yeah, it's going to be
I
an
agree
exciting
with you.
time of rebuilding the U.S. government, I think, in 28 and 32.
Yeah, let's see how it goes, huh?
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that's enough for this one, I think.
All right, we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, have another one of these on Friday.
Very good.